Hello everyone, and welcome to my video for the week. You'll have to bear with me, I am not in the best of moods this week, considering how my Giants started out their season, which was quite horribly. The way we played this week, I'm starting to think, yeah, we're going to be last in the division. I can't see us, with all the injuries we've sustained and all the, the key losses that we've had in the off-season and the way we've been playing from preseason and our first real game, I just don't see us beating out Philly or the Skins, who look greatly improved, so kudos to them. Or even the Cowboys, who are still choke artists, but they still look better than us, so I won't rag them too hard. So yeah, I'm not a very happy football fan this week, but this is a wrestling channel, so we'll get into the professional wrestling. Night of Champions is this Sunday, but I already previewed it last week, so I'm not going to talk too much about it. What I do want to talk about is the 2 episodes of wrestling television I did watch this week. I'm filming this right after I got done watching Impact Wrestling, and I did watch Raw this week. And I have to say, starting with Raw, the show was horrible. I thought it was one of the worst Raws I've seen in a while. Which makes me kind of sad, because they had, over the summer, once they started the Punk thing, Raw had become the best wrestling show around, and now we're back to doing these kind of ho-hum shows, which kind of makes me sad. And up against Monday Night Football, look, I was switching back and forth between Raw and Monday Night Football. When Raw offers Bret Hart getting in the ring, which I hated it, and I've said before on this channel, Bret Hart was my favorite wrestler in the 90s. As a kid, especially, he was my all-time favorite to watch. I love watching him, and I hate seeing what he's become. He's become a nostalgia spot guy, where he just comes in, hits a spot, and that's it. And to me, that's so far beneath what Bret used to be that it's not good for a nostalgia pop. It's just sad to see that's like, wow, that's all I can do now. Just tag in and hit the sharpshooter. That's great. I mean, to me, that's just pathetic, and I don't want to see that out of Bret. I wish he wouldn't try to wrestle anymore. It's not just the wrestling. On the mic, he's horrible now. I mean, that opening bit with him and Alberto Del Rio was just painful. It was really bad. So you had Bret Hart wrestling. You had Vicky Guerrero wrestling, which I don't know why the hell they keep forcing that one. You put her in the ring, you know it's going to be a piece of shit. I don't care how short you keep the match. It's going to suck. And you put her in with Kelly, so it's only going to get worse from there. I saw them work with each other at WrestleMania 26, I think it was. Yeah, it wasn't good. Of course it was, and that was a tag match, but yeah, so that was awful. And you had Jerry Lawler getting into the ring, which, if you've been following this channel for a while, I just love watching Jerry Lawler wrestle, don't I? So you had all of that on this show, and on the other show, Monday Night Football, you had Tom Brady putting on one of the greatest performances I've ever seen out of a quarterback. And I hate Tom Brady with a passion because, I'm a fan. I'm a non-Patriots fan, so I have to hate him. I support another team, so I have to hate Tom Brady because of how good he is. And this performance was good even by his standards. I mean, it was truly one for the ages. And you really got to see why Tom Brady really is probably the greatest player of all time. He just looked unbelievable. And yeah, so which show was a better option? I don't know. I felt like WWE was like, yeah, we don't give a shit. Go watch Monday Night Football. It's okay. It's like, you want to watch football? Okay, we'll just put on a shit show. It's almost like they quit. It wasn't good. And the best part of the show was the closing segment between Punk and Triple H. And even that didn't come off as well as I'd hoped. I thought the very end was good, where the mic was shorting out and Punk just got pissed off and bitch slapped Triple H with the mic. I thought that was cool. But what I didn't like was the interaction. Wasn't as well as it could have been. Now, Triple H was the guy that was towing the company line, feeding all the bullshit. It's like, oh, Cena won the people over, even though half the audience hates him, at least. I mean, go on, even the people that support Cena, you have to admit that at least half the WWE fan base hates his guts. I mean, it's a toss-up every week. If give or take a little bit, but he's going to get a mixed reaction every week. Okay, I mean, and if you think I'm wrong, just watch the television shows. I don't know what to tell you. And so for him to say it's like, oh, he won the people over, I'm like, that's kind of a bullshit company line, isn't it? But Triple H needs to be that guy for the story to make sense. So, okay, that's fine. He's feeding us all the company bullshit lines. The problem was with Punk, actually. I felt like he didn't adequately explain himself in the segment. I thought he kind of came off as a whiner. It was like, oh, I got underpushed and da-da-da-da-da. Stuff, but he didn't list specific examples, except for the Survivor Series example, which was good, but I wish he'd done more of that. Like, okay, Christian got over mad, and it took him 6 years to win a world title after that initial buzz. I mean, Christian should have been pushed to the main event in 2005, 2006. And it took him until 2011 to pull the trigger. And for those of you saying, well, he went to TNA, it's like, well, he went to TNA because WWE wasn't using him for whatever reason, even though he was one of the most over acts in the company. Go figure. Things like that. And listed, like, look, and Punk could have said, look, I was the hottest thing in the company in 2009, I lose the title, and then all of a sudden I'm working dark matches on pay-per-views. How does that happen, And I wish that they'd let Punk list more and more examples of to kind of state his case a little bit better and make Triple H look more like this sleazy businessman or whatever. But I don't think he just kind of came off like a whiner. He didn't list enough examples, I think. But yeah, and that was the best part of the show of an otherwise very weak and forgettable Raw. Now, Impact this week, I actually mostly enjoyed. I'm a little surprised that I'm saying that. Sting and Flair was not as bad as the reports were saying it was. The reports were saying it was, quote, unfit for television. And, like, I see worse matches than that every week. I mean, the match was a piece of shit, don't get me wrong, but it was a piece of shit in the manner that it was the typical formulaic Ric Flair match with an overbooked finish. And I'm like, I can tolerate that. Compared to, I've been ragging on Flair's matches for over a decade, since 99 WCW, so a long-ass time. And it's the same formulaic bullshit I've seen from him a million times, and I got sick of seeing it a long time ago. But comparing to what I thought it was going to be, it could have been a lot worse. And I really like what they're doing with Robert Roode, him winning the Bound for Glory series, and now he's going to be wrestling a Fortune member every week. I think that's a cool little thing to do with him and give him a nice path into Bound for Glory. And everything else in the show was mostly okay, and if it wasn't, there was nothing spectacularly bad on the show, I'll say that. And the main angle I enjoyed is what they're doing with Robert Roode. I thought the segment with Fortune was really good, and I look forward to seeing how they continue to build Bobby heading in Bound for Glory. And that's what I wanted this video to really be about. The Bound for Glory series. I did not see No Surrender. I said last week I wasn't going to watch No Surrender, so I didn't see it. But reading the results, the Bound for Glory series portion of the show sounded really good. Again, I don't know. I didn't see it. But based on just reading the results, that part of the show sounded really good. And Bobby Roode won, and I think that he was the best option. I think I picked him to win it, and I'm really happy with this decision. I think TNA has actually created a somewhat interesting world title match for their pay-per-view. It's a new guy getting a push. They followed through on this Bound for Glory series thing. They created a winner, and I look forward to seeing where they go with it. For all the things that they might be doing wrong at Bound for Glory, which I'll do a Bound for Glory preview in the upcoming weeks, but of all the things that they could be doing that could be terrible, this world title match they've set up, I think, is pretty good. The only problem with it is that Kurt Angle, his heel turn made absolutely no sense, so him being in the spot is just kind of silly. But, Robert Roode, I think it's, good for him. I've been a big fan of his for a long time. I think he's a very talented guy. And the fact that they're taking the time to kind of build him up into a major player for their biggest show of the year, I think is really cool. And TNA's taking a risk on a young guy. I kind of like that. A young guy that I actually have faith in, not like a Gunner or a Wade Barrett or anything like that. But what I really wanted to talk about was the Bound for Glory series as a whole. Now, I've ragged on TNA for a lot of their bad ideas. This is the same company that came up with Feast or Fired, hated that. Same company that came up with that stupid ranking system they did last year, which was made absolutely no sense. I'm okay with a ranking system, but for them to overcomplicate it with fan voting, which makes absolutely no sense. The example I use is like, okay, if other sports had fan voting, the Dallas Cowboys and the Pittsburgh Steelers would get into the playoffs every year, and that would make me sad. Regardless of what their win-loss records were, which would just make me mad. Fan voting should not be a part of any ranking system. I don't care if wrestling's not real. If you want this thing to make any kind of sense, you can't be doing that. So that's why the ranking system failed. It's not because the idea of a ranking system is stupid. It's just their execution of the ranking system was stupid. But getting back to my point, this is, TNA, they came up with the Luck of the Irish match, which nobody seems to remember. Go back and watch some of the weekly pay-per-views from 2004. One of them included, I'm trying to remember, it was the show that had Raven versus Sabu. And there was a match between Pat Kenny, Simon Diamond, and Big Vito from the Mamalukes. And they had a match called the Luck of the Irish match. Go watch that match. It is one of the worst gimmick matches I've ever seen in my life. Same company that came up with the knockout lockbox match, or whatever the fuck that crap was. That was terrible. So this company's had a lot of dumb ideas. Let's just throw that out there right now. A lot of stupid, dumbass ideas. The Bound for Glory series, I think, is a really, really good idea. And I think it's an idea that needs to be treated like a newborn baby. You gotta nurture it, you gotta love it, you gotta cherish it, and you gotta take care of it, and you gotta handle it in a way and help it grow and develop into something meaningful for the company. I think the Bound for Glory series should be an annual thing. I think TNA should continue doing this. I like several aspects of it. I like that house show matches count. It means that the storyline is ongoing throughout the week. It's not just the one episode. So the house shows count, and you get a weekly update. I like following the weekly updates. It kind of had a real sports feel to it, kind of like football or MMA would. I like that wins and losses actually mean something, which I've complained about that a lot. I think, maybe not apply the same point system to everything, but I think that wins and losses should really count in determining who gets title shots. And I wish TNA would do that with all their titles. Again, not necessarily the point system, but just that idea of you have to win a series of matches to get a title shot. You can't just, win one match and all of a sudden you're a top contender, or win no matches and just be mad at the champion and you get a title shot. That's not how it should work. And WWE's guilty of that. TNA's been guilty of that. But the Bound for Glory series erases that problem. And it's an ongoing storyline from June to October, building up your biggest pay-per-view. So again, I like that. And what I like about the point system, and this is what kind of intrigued me while reading the No Surrender results, the point system changes your strategy of how you approach certain matches. If you want to take the lead, like James Storm did at the pay-per-view, you have to win by submission to earn more points. I kind of like that. You're not going to get the same typical kind of match. You're going to see a wrestler try and change a strategy and adapt to whatever situation that he's in. So there are a lot of aspects to the Bound for Glory series that are really good. I even like that they kind of spiderwebbed with it and had the Bound for Glory series tell different stories. Not just establishing a top contender, but you had things like the Crimson undefeated streak, Jerry Lynn screwing Rob Van Dam out of the series by getting him DQ'd and costing him points. Like the Pope and Devon partnership, Joe's losing streak, all kinds of things. I'm not saying these stories were perfect, but they used the Bound for Glory series to kind of tell all their stories throughout the show. And I kind of like that. And for anybody who thinks that, you apply sports elements into professional wrestling, which is more story-based, it kind of erases the story element. I disagree, because you can do all kinds of things with that, and TNA tried to do that with this series. And for the most part, I thought it was pretty entertaining. I enjoyed it. Now, that said, I do think the Bound for Glory series needs to be tweaked a little bit. There are a couple things they need to work on. Number one, and this was posted, I believe the PW Torch posted this. I'm not entirely sure. But there was a major discrepancy in the number of matches that some of the guys had. I think Gunner had like 19 matches, and Pope only had like 12 or something. I don't know the exact numbers, but it was something. There are huge discrepancies between how many matches the guys had. I think for the series to be truly fair and to make it seem like it's well organized, every wrestler has to have the same amount of matches. Like, say, every wrestler has to have 15 matches between June and September, and they have to have 15 matches to determine the series winner, and that's more fair. Tag matches was a bit of a concern. I thought having tag matches in a single competition series was kind of weird, but if you're going to do that, I do think the partner should get some points, the partner of the winning team, even if he didn't score the fall, because the way they had it set up, only the winner of the fall would get the points. And I thought that was kind of weird, because I thought, well, every match is going to turn into a fatal four-way then, because people are going to, go into business for themselves and try and score the pins. So I think to kind of circumvent that a little bit, at least give the partner some points. Maybe not as many as the guy who gets the pin, but give them at least a handful of points just to even it out a little bit, make it a little bit more fair, and make it seem like they actually accomplished something when they get the win, rather than just being, oh, well, I missed out on the fall, so I don't get anything. So that's something that I think should be fixed or looked into, or just drop tag matches altogether from the series, whatever. And one other thing I think they should do with No Surrender, make that the Bound for Glory series pay-per-view. Like, make that the grand finale to the series. They did 3 matches for the series at the pay-per-view, so they kind of ended up doing what I think they should do and make that pay-per-view about the Bound for Glory series. I think having a world title match at No Surrender was completely pointless because, A, we all knew that Angle wasn't going to drop the title. Sting's not going to win the title because he's going to face Hogan, because that match has to happen. Although recent reports are saying that the match is not going to happen now, so I guess we'll find out come showtime. I don't know. But, there was no point to have a world title match on that show. I don't think. I mean, some people say it's like, oh, well, you got to make the pay-per-view seem as grand as possible, so you got to have a world title match. I'm like, well, did anybody really give a shit about the world title match? I mean, because like I said, there's no drama there because we know Angle's not dropping the belt and we know Sting's not going to win it. So the only thing they could do is Anderson winning the title, which would make no sense because he's not a heel. So it just seems stupid to do, to have a world title match. And I would have rather had Angle, the champion, or whoever they wanted to be champion, be the observer of the series. Let him kind of be a specter that watches all the matches. And then the last match in the series is the closer to the pay-per-view, and then the show ends with a stare down. That's what I would have done. Because I felt like, again, reading the results, I felt like Robert Roode's victory was the emotional climax of the pay-per-view. And I think that would have been a better way to end the show. And, end it with a stare down with Curtin. I think that would have been great. But that goes into what I talk about all the time. People think you need to have a world title match at every single pay-per-view. I don't think you do. And in WWE's case, you definitely don't need to have 2 at every pay-per-view. Because, I mean, you most of the time you just create a bunch of matches that nobody really cares about. It's just, oh, it's a world title match against so-and-so. There's either something bigger on the horizon or the feud they're doing has already been overplayed, so why even do the match? But yeah, those are a couple things I think that would help the Bound for Glory series. And, with No Surrender, have maybe 6 matches between the 12 guys and let the final 2, whoever has the most points, wrestle in the main event of the pay-per-view, and that will be the closer. And maybe have a bumper match in between somewhere, I don't know. But that's what I would do to kind of tweak the Bound for Glory series a little bit. But overall, I think it's a really cool idea. I think TNA should stick with it and do it every year. I really enjoyed it for the most part. I mean, there were a couple of things that they did that were weird. Like, as much as I like Robert Roode getting the win, I think I said this a few videos ago, I don't think they gave him enough promo time to really be considered like a huge force in the series. I wish they had let him run with, I think it was June, he cut that promo on Hogan and Flair and how much he's sick of being in the shadow of the legends and how it's his time or whatever. Let him be that guy for the whole series and let him cut those kind of promos that it's time for the new guy. And that could have been his story through the whole thing. But, for all my little minor criticisms and nitpicks, I do really enjoy the Bound for Glory series. I think TNA should stick with it. And, they actually had a good idea. If Russo came up with this, I will be even more shocked because, fuck. Russo does have at least a couple of good ideas. I guess a blind squirrel finds a nut once in a while. But, that's my video for the week. And I will be back next week. And hopefully my Giants play well. I mean, fuck, we're playing the Rams. We should be able to win that game, right? Right? But, yeah, that's all I got for now. I'll see you all next week. And everybody enjoy your weekend.